So Michael wanted us just to have a conversation, and when I prompted him to say, here are some questions I might ask, he said, no, I don't need to hear those. and I take that as a reflection of our friendship and the many conversations we've had over the gestation of this book and over getting to know him here in Oxford. And I'm appreciative of that trust. I want to start in a really simple way and ask him to talk about the dedication to this book, because it seems appropriate when this crowd is gathered in Oxford. So many people out in our audience that I know and love, and I know this dedication speaks to that.
I kept it under my hat. It's been a long time, but I dedicated it to Jack Sonny, to Jack, my brother in arms, and there was no other person that I loved more in that moment that I wanted to dedicate the book to. And it was hard for me to not tell anybody, especially sitting around the power corner up there, but here we are. So yeah, this book is for Jack, and I thought about him a lot through the course of it.
In that same vein, since your last book came out, Salvage the World, you've taken up some new vocations. And they're not entirely new to you, and I probably will get this wrong because there's a multitude of things you have done, but there are 2 films that have been made from scripts of yours?
Yeah, Salvage came out, I think, in April of 23, and then Desperation Road and Rumble Through the Dark came out in the fall of 23. Yeah.
And then, thinking of Jack, you formed a band and recorded an album?
Yes, we did. The Smokes. Thanks to Jimbo Mathis, quite frankly, he kept kind of noodling me. He's like, I know you got some songs. I know you got some songs. And I mean, truly, to go back to Jack, Jack was always the same way. He's like, I know you got some songs. Let's record something. I always kicked the rock down the road. So when Jimbo came to me about that and Jack had passed, I was like, you know what? I don't know what the hell I'm waiting on anymore. Let's just do it and see what happens. And, anybody who's seen us play or heard us knows the Smokes and how great they are, and it's just kind of like I sit up in front and let them do all the work. But yeah, it's been a whole lot of fun.
And then most recently, you've written a film and then directed a short film, yes?
Oh yeah, I did that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went down to Jackson last summer to do an interview with PBS, and the guy who interviewed me was with this new thing that's kind of formed the last couple of years, the Institute of Southern Storytelling, and he said, you know what, we're doing a lot of documentary stuff, but we'd love to do some narrative stuff. Do you have anything you would like to adapt into a short film? And the answer is always yes, whether you do or not. And I said yes. And then I think he had read an interview with me in which, sitting and watching the films being made, sitting right next to the director, sitting in Video Village, I really thought it'd be cool to direct a film. And I think I'd said that in some interview somewhere. And so he asked me, he goes, well, do you want to direct it? And the answer is always what, John T?
Yes.
And so, that was last summer. In November, we shot the film. And that's like time travel in the movie world. So yeah, I don't know. Perhaps I get bored easily.
Yeah, there's a question forming here, and it's, I guess I'm interested in the hierarchy of your vocations, or the hierarchy of your interests. What's at the top? Or are they all on a flat line comparison, equally capture your attention? If you only had to do one thing, what would you do? Or what's the thing that makes you happiest? Answer it in any way you want, but think about it.
How long do I have to think about it?
About 3 seconds.
You know what? I think it's a question that the answer varies from time to time. I think if you would have asked me 12 months ago, I would have said writing novels, 1, film 2nd, music 3rd. But now I think today, because recently I've been asked to direct a film, And we're also really working really hard to shoot Blackwood this September. I agree. How about that? Considering it's falling apart twice, yeah, maybe things are showing. But I think right now my hierarchy is film, the smokes, and considering I do not have one word of a new novel, I would say that's third.
Let's go ahead and sell this one first.
Yeah, let's try to sell this one first.
Do they talk to each other? Like, do you learn things writing a novel that then apply to the film you're writing?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I've been kind of surprised at how the novel writing translates to both the script writing and like the directing. Because when I'm writing a novel, I'm the camera. Like I'm everything. Like I'm telling everybody what to say, and I'm directing the scene, and I'm showing the landscape, and I'm filling whatever gap needs to be filled. And if there's music playing in the background as they're sitting in the bar, then that's all those are my decisions. And I think as a director, it's very similar. Like you show it with a script, right? But the way the camera gets positioned, and the way you set people, and the way you put them in motion, and the way the light falls, and all those things. I think the novelist in me is accustomed to that, you know. And I think in terms of writing the scripts and doing the adaptations, I think it's very much the same thing because, and I've told this story before, but I'll tell it again because I think it's been very beneficial to me, and that one of the best pieces of writing advice I ever got as a fiction writer, and I don't even remember who gave it to me, but it was a long time ago, but they said, when you're writing fiction or when you're writing sentences, you should pretend that you're sitting in a movie theater and the person next to you is blindfolded, and you need to describe to them what you see, right? And that made a lot of sense to me because you wouldn't just say to them, oh, there's a bookstore, right? You would say, there's a store with brick walls and hardwood floors, and there's a for sale sign down one wall, and there's a stack of encyclopedias across one, and there's paperbacks on the left. And then in film, you know, like the screen changes like really quickly, so you would have to do it economically. You have to describe it with images, economically, over and over and over and over and over and over and over again until the thing is done. And that made a lot of sense to me. So like when my novels started coming out and the reviews would say things like they're very cinematic, I think early on as a writer, I started thinking in a cinematic way because of that advice. Whoever that was, oh God, I wish I could remember. But anyway, whoever that was gave it to me. So it might have even been a little cheat down the road when it came time to start writing screenplays because visually I was so image-driven, I think, in my thought process already that maybe I was suited for it already, you know.
And then, other than the way you keep holding the mic like a rock and roller, how does it translate to your music?
Well, I think music's the same way. I think songs are very image-driven, you know, and in songs, I mean, how long is a song? Like 150 words? I don't know. They're pretty short, but they are image-driven, and the things that stay with us are images that create emotions. Like my song Wild Magnolias, the first verse is, whiskey in the afternoon, the leaves falling off the trees, a pretty girl on a pretty day, honeysuckle on the breeze. I mean, it's just all image-driven, right? And for me, it created an emotion. And so hopefully whoever hears it or experiences it also feels that same emotion. So I think they're all intertwined in some way. And I think what they all have in common is you're looking to create that visual that creates that emotion that gives the reader or the listener or the viewer a personal experience because they can then take it and like filter it through their own eyes and their own life. At least that's what you hope for.
Michael's going to read from this, a short piece in a minute. Before you do that, Michael, I want to ask you to introduce us to the characters that populate this novel.
Well, every one of my novels has started the same way as that. That's what this image I cannot get out of my head, right? And I think if you open any of my novels and you turn to page 1, that is the thing that I could not shake loose, that kept me up at night, that when I'm walking around town or whatever and you see me, like, that's the thing I'm thinking about. And for this, for Lay Your Armor Down, it was like, I just had this image of this old woman with dementia who wanders off into the woods in the middle of the night. And I just started following her. And for me, it was great as a writer because it's scary, right? I mean, who's been lost in the woods? Anybody? How's it feel? Pretty shitty, right? Who's been lost in the woods in the night? That's a whole different thing. It's pretty terrifying. So I had the night, I had the woods, didn't know where she was going. I was following her, I was going with her. So from a creative standpoint, it was a lot of cool stuff, right? From a personal standpoint, which I think every novel needs to, like, you got to get in there, right? I was scared for her. Like, and I was worried about her, and I had empathy for her on page 1. I was afraid of what was going to happen to her. And so that's how Lay Your Armor came to be, because I just started following this woman through the woods. And then we come upon it eventually. Of course, you got to have a few other people in the novel. But I think this is the least probably populated novel that I've written, because there's Berdine and Keel, and there's Kara, and there's the little girl who may or may not have some superpower. And that's it, you know. Keel and Berdine, I mean, I could have written 1,000 pages with those two just sitting around talking. You're welcome that I didn't, by the way. Every novel, there's a character who surprises me, who when it starts, I think I know what they are, kind of know who they are, and by the end, there's something totally different. And Berdine was that character for me in Lay Your Armor Down. From the moment he's introduced to the moment at the end, his journey was the one that surprised me and, like, I think carried me too the most. So perhaps it's a sign of age and impatience that there are fewer characters in every novel that I write, or perhaps it's a sign of maybe focus in some way, and that here's people in a very difficult situation, and I'm unwilling to look away from them, maybe in ways that I did before, to kill time or to, I mean, I don't know. I have no idea how to explain it, but it's very. There's 4 characters, and I love them all too. I do.
When you say you love them, what do you mean?
I mean, I want them to succeed in whatever it is they're trying to succeed in. I want them to get whatever they want.
Even if that's not a morally defensible thing.
Right. I also know they're not going to. Right? I mean, it's like life, right? You're not going to get what you want. Maybe sometimes, but not all the time. But in the context of, like, a story like this, like, I want them to, like, get what they want, but I know they're not going to, which makes it hurtful for me too. Like, people ask me, like, do you ever just feel bad about what you're doing? Like, to these people? Like, well, one, they're made up. But 2, the lesson I learned from Larry Brown, which people who know me know what an influence he had on me, was Larry, in reading his interviews, talked about sandbagging, in which he would say, I was going to pile as much on my characters as I possibly could to see how they would react, to see if they could stand it. And so I feel pretty certain I do the same thing, and I do love them. And I even love the bad guys. I think I love the bad guys worse than the good guys and gals. You know what I mean? And I don't know what that says about me in particular.
You sound like you're almost talking about family. I mean, you accept their foibles, you accept their terrors, and you love them no matter.
I think that's a really good way to put it. I mean, the course of writing a novel is a very emotional experience for me, to be quite honest. And by the time, I have people say to me like, I was like spent. I was exhausted when I got to the end of that novel. I'm like, well, how long did it take you to read it? Well, 3 days. I'm like, well, that was me for a year, And then it was me for a couple more months in the revision. And I'm really exhausted by it when it's over. And if I wasn't, then that would have been then I've written the wrong novel. And if I'm not scared and worried about my characters on page one, then I'm writing the wrong novel. And if it's not taking me into unfamiliar emotional territory, I'll be quite honest, this is not a spoiler. When they go into the abandoned cellar at the end of chapter 2 and they find the little girl standing there, that was really a uncomfortable moment for me. But I also knew that was the thing that I could not and would not and should not ignore. Like, that's the thing. It's almost like the sign, right? And you say family, like we've all got family, right? Family hurts. Family hurts and disappoints and scares us and rewards us and gives us great joy and great despair, all at the same time. And I think that's how I feel all the way through a novel until it's over. And then I'd sit around and cry and drink for about a couple months and try to find a way to do it again.
You said you were exhausted at the end of the novel. And one of the things I noticed about these characters is a lot of them, when visions or terrors come to them, they are exhausted because they didn't sleep the next night. Their insomnia is rampant in this book, and the bad stuff comes at night. Almost as if any of y'all know what it's like to have insomnia, your brain begins racing, and the neuroses take over, and you project the worst possible thing. I see a few of y'all nodding. The worst possible thing that might happen the next day when you wake. Like, this feels like that.
Yeah.
Do you have a relationship to insomnia?
Oh yeah. I'm glad people were nodding. We should all just meet at like 3 a.m. and just hang out. I've never been a great sleeper, but if any of you are familiar with Blackwood, that's when I pretty much stopped sleeping. That thing messed me up, man. And I don't know that I've gotten over it completely. And quite frankly, when I had the idea for Keel in this book, I'm like, well, I'm just going to hand it off to him, right? And let him experience it, because I think there is something, I know there is, because I go through it, of being there in the middle of the night, and it's very quiet, and it's very dark, and the rest of the world is doing something you really wish you could do. And the thought process of it is, well, you never think about good shit, right? You only think about how horrible everything is in the middle of the night. And then when you do fall asleep for 5 minutes, I'd really it's very dream ridden, I don't know. Maybe it's because your mind's just so hustling. But I think from a fiction standpoint and from a writing and character standpoint, again, from a being creative, that's very fertile ground, and I know that from having gone through it. But I think dreams to me are very interesting in general, and just dreams and the subconscious and things you may be sure of or may be unsure of, or things you think are real or maybe not quite be real. To me, that's very fertile ground as a writer and as a storyteller, and I don't think it's any accident that Blackwood, and then there was Nick, which lives in its own world, but Blackwood salvaged this world, and now Lay Your Armor Down, I think, kind of lived between that real and imagined world a little bit. And I think that has a lot to do with my own experience of not sleeping, and when I do, it's kind of troubled sleep.
Like you're in that liminal state between sleep and wake.
Right.
Yeah. And that's where the visions come.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
You want to read something now? Or do you want to keep going from there?
I don't know. What do you want to do?
Why don't you read something? See what kind of page.
So I'm going to tell y'all something I'm not going to do to you. This is one of my favorite stories about being in this bookstore. I was here for a reading a few years ago, and this guy I knew who gave me a blurb. I came here to hear him read, and sitting on that hard-ass chair you're sitting on, and he talked for 15 minutes, and then he goes, now, I'm going to read for 37 minutes. And I thought he was joking. There was about 12 people here. And I'd already made eye contact with him, so I was just screwed. There was no way. I was going to get to get up and read. And I'll be damned. I looked at my watch when he started reading. I'll be damned if 37 minutes later he didn't close the book. I'm like, well, okay, that's impressive. It was also fairly miserable. No, it's very, very miserable. I'm going to read for like 4.5. A half mile away from the cinder block bar, Keel turned from the road and onto a risen strip of levee that weaved through the swampy terrain. He parked and he opened the door and he sat there listening to the night. The theater of darkness played with calls and groans and croaks, and he heard the random splash of predator and prey. Cypress knots poked up from the black water like arms reaching for deliverance, and the drape of the willows reached down toward them as if nature on her own could join hands and save herself. The lightning danced behind boulders of clouds in sporadic quietude, and Keel admitted the tranquility he felt in the natural world, even if it had been calamity that had delivered him to this moment. In the shine of the remaining headlight, he had seen a pathway that led from the levee and cut across the marshland. He raised from the car seat and started in the direction of the bar, wanting to sneak up on it in case others had appeared. A deepening haze swallowed the yellow-green neon, a murky and sickly beacon. In his mind, there were alligators with great jaws and great hunger lying in wait along the pathway. Their bulging eyes and ancient heads appeared as every fallen limb or clump of Spanish moss that lingered on the surface of the sodden world. It kept him moving quickly, the earth sucking at his feet, and the lightning danced above. He walked on fixated on the hazy neon, and all seemed quiet, and then he paused to knock the muddy clumps from his boot heels, and when he did, he noticed the silence, the pause of life around him. And there was no more lightning, but only the lungs of the dark. A gentle and nearly soundless rain began to fall, and then he recognized it the same way he always recognized the instants when his dreams appeared in front of him. With a half second of astonishment that was followed by the intrigue of watching the premonition unfold, he had felt this rain and heard this silence, and he knew what was coming next. He raised his face and palms to the sky and felt the cleansing and waited for the crash of thunder, and then he heard it coming from miles away, rolling toward him in an avalanche of sound that ripped through both him and the earth. The rain disappeared, and the rush of the wind came next, following the chronology of his dreams. Pushing across the flat land in a wave of gust, and the thunder bellowed and joined with the wind, and in the sudden rush of power, and Keel knew that at any instant it would all stop and return to silence, and then it would be time to run. He watched. It stopped. A crack of lightning ruptured the night, and then another, and Keel began running along the pathway, slipping and sinking and fighting against the soggy ground. And then the lightning began to assault the landscape just as he had seen. The strikes into the treetops of cypress and cottonwoods, showers of sparks and flame appearing against the dark and burst of white and gold, and he ran ducking and desperate for a cover that he knew would not be there, because the dream was alive, and in the dream there was no shelter, and only the destruction of the building he was running toward. But he ran on with no choice and with the hope that he could defeat the dream. He was coming closer and closer to the cinder block bar, and all he needed was a handful of seconds to run inside and grab the coat and run back out and let the lightning do its work to the decrepit roadside joint. He made it from the pathway and into the gravel of the parking lot, and he saw the car smashed against the outer wall. And he saw the dented metal door, and he could see himself with the coat and money tucked under his arm. as he raced back for the big car when the destruction that was promised in his dream occurred in a split-second terror strike of lightning that exploded the roof of the building. Keel dropped and rolled in the gravel and covered his head as if he had been delivered onto some long-ago battlefield where cannonballs crushed men and earth without mercy or prejudice. He lay there covered up, listening to the lightning cracks and the echoes of the cracks that trailed off into the reaches of night. And he expected to feel a fatal zap into his back at any instant, and the satisfaction leaving his body the instant after. That was not in his dream, and he never died in his dream, because he always woke when the building was struck. So he kept his head down, and he flinched with the sound of each bolt. But the strike into his back never came, and the lightning ceased. When he felt secure enough to raise his head from the gravel and look around, the roof of the building was burning and breaking and collapsing. He hustled to his feet and over to the door. He opened it, and a beam had fallen across the pool table, and Berdine's coat smoldered, and the dead men burned. And as he watched the flames, he could not help but wonder if the girl had been responsible for everything that he had seen, both behind his eyes and in front of it. And
You know what I mean about dreams?
yeah. It's real, man.
Yeah. And you make this, when you said it's real, man, and you make this real world, and you make a world. I feel like the characters from your last novel would have run into the characters from this novel at the convenience store buying packs of cigarettes and walked out the door as one was walking in. Are you building a world, or what are you trying to show us in that world?
Well, I think I am building a world, although it came about quite by accident. A few novels ago, I had, I wrote Blackwood after the fire, right? I was really stuck in Blackwood because there was this weird itinerant family that was just kind of there in the novel, right? And it wasn't working, and I was like, okay, I've got to figure out who these people are and where they came from. And I sat down one day and I said, I'm just going to open up a blank page and I'm going to write them driving into town and their car breaking down in this town, so at least I'll know they came from somewhere and they were going somewhere, and like for whatever purpose. And when I started writing that family driving into that town and the car breaking down, I described the vehicle, beer and tequila. I described that vehicle as a foul-running Cadillac. And I remember I stopped. I've told you this story. And I stopped and I'm like, foul-running Cadillac. Like I've used, like that's a distinct phrase. And I've used that phrase before. Like, where did that come from? And I looked over and the fighter was laying down there on my bookshelf. And I just picked up the fighter and I opened to the opening pages of the fighter where little baby Jack Boucher is dropped off at the Salvation Army store in the beginning. And when the car drives away, it's described as a foul-running Cadillac. And I was like, oh my God, that's who it is. Those people have dropped off this baby at the Salvation Army store and they drove away because they never appear again in the fire. And this is their story. Like they've gone now a few towns over and their car has broken down. And that opened up that novel for me. Like it's, quite frankly, it saved Blackwood because I was ready to give the money back and throw it in the garbage, which throw it in the garbage is fine, but Sabria would have never let me give the money back. And so, but I really loved how that worked, right? And so after Nick, Rivers, I've always kind of wanted to go back to that Rivers world, but not directly. Like the first sentence of Rivers was it had been raining for weeks, maybe months. And people asked me about maybe writing a second part to that. And the last thing I want to do is start a novel that said, well, it's still raining. That was not possible. So, but I did think, okay, South Mississippi, there's Desperation Road and there's rivers. What if something fell right in the middle of that? And that was Salvage This World. And so, I really love the way that felt. And then with Salvage This World, there's this little girl that's rumored everybody's looking for with this crazy-ass traveling revival, tent revival. And so when I sat down to write Armor, and I didn't really know what it was about, and when Keel and Burdine are going through the night, and they're told, you go to this abandoned cellar, and you'll know what it is when you see it. I had no idea what they were going to find. I had no clue. I was just going with them. Like, well, we'll see when they get there. And they go in the cellar, and they step over the bodies, and they open the door, and I wrote the sentence, and there stood a little girl, and it hit me like, that's the little girl everybody's rumored to be looking for, who controls the weather from Salvage This World. And so, like, it's not anything like sit down and do and say, like, I'm going to connect worlds, but it's kind of starting to happen. And I really do like the way it feels, and that all the novels are standalone, but I like those. I mean, when I'm watching a movie or I'm reading books and I get little Easter eggs, like from one story to the next of somebody I really like, I think it's kind of cool. So I think as a writer and creator, I found it to be kind of cool as well. If you call that building your own universe, I guess that's fine, which also sounds very cool. So yes, we'll say that.
Thanks for that. That helped me figure out, because when I read your novels, I have this inkling of the connection, but I'm not able to grab hold of it. But I know somehow instinctually they connect across time and space and character.
Yeah. Yeah. They do.
This seems a good time to open up the questions to y'all. You may ask him about his universe. You may ask him about anything, I guess.
Yeah.
I have 3 questions. One is when did you first get serious about your writing? What age?
When did I first get serious about my writing? I was 30 years old.
30 years old.
Yeah. Clueless.
The second one is, what are you, the singer or just the songwriter or musician in the Smokes?
Am I just the singer?
The answer's yes.
Am I just the songwriter?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm just those things.
You don't play this.
I do play guitar as well.
There you go.
Not very well, but that's why I got the smoke. See, the genius of it all is you were put a great band around you.
Yeah. Front man. You're the front man.
Yeah, I'm the front man.
Yeah. And the third is, where can I go to hear you guys play?
We are playing June 19th at Proud Larry's. I will be flying home from Rhode Island that day after 3 long weeks of a book tour that starts tomorrow. And I'm going to be coming in hot. And we're going to be ready to freaking throw down on June 19th.
June 19th. Where?
8 o'clock at Proud Larry's, free show. Put your t-shirt on and come on.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We have a question way in the back. Come on.
Hey, so I have a question about going from a writer, which is a singular journey, right? I'm assuming it's very internal, and then going into being a filmmaker and a band, and more than a singer, I mean, all the things.
Yeah.
But which is a collaborative process. Like, how have you navigated that from being so internal as a writer to really having to work with others and add value to each other to get to a product, or tell a story collectively?
Right. Well, that's a good question. And there's a...
So could you repeat the question?
Yeah, she asked me... What'd she ask me? No, she asked me how I go from being like a singular writer of a novel to doing something more collaborative, such as making a film or being in a band. There's a amount of letting go, particularly like with a film, that I had to learn. And you got to trust. You realize there's so many talented people in the world, and hopefully they are in the room with you or on the set with you. But quite frankly, Shannon, it's been welcome to me because you sit alone in a room for so long writing a novel. And I don't talk about a novel to anybody when I'm working on it. I don't tell Sabria about it. I mean, she knows I'm working on one, but like I don't tell her like what's up. I don't tell my editor. I don't tell my agent. When I have a full manuscript and I feel like they could take it to the printer tomorrow and it'll be pretty good, that's when I turn it in. So you're talking about 10 months of not talking to anybody about any of it. And then it's just you and the editor, and then it's months more of like getting to the finish line. So like working on a film and being with actors and a DP and directors and an art department, all those things, I've really embraced that, and I enjoy that, watching other talented people like also take your vision, quite frankly, and come to it with an enthusiasm that maybe you might have lost over the time since it's been created. As far as music, I mean, even with a film, there's so much waiting, right? I mean, you know this. There's so much waiting from point A to, like, you get this done and you sit around and wait. With music, you can write a song, you say, hey, let's get together, we go play, and then a week and a half later, where Larry's playing, you get that instant feedback and gratification in that, and you're also surrounded by a group of talented, very talented people, and you get to hear what they do, and everybody's enthusiastic, and then you go in the bar, and there's people there, and they're dancing and, like, applauding. That is an exchange, quite frankly, I need, you know, and it feels really good. So I think the letting go of like, yeah, I'm the novelist, and I see everything, and everything's my call, and everything everybody says, I do cherish that, but I also have really fed off of working with either musicians or people like working on a film, like to share, you know. I'm not really precious about it, quite frankly, and people who aren't my favorite people. You know, we've been around those, you know. Oh, my vision, whatever, bullshit. Let's just do it the best we can, right? So, it is a different thing, but I dig both of them. I really enjoy both of them.
Other questions?
Please talk about your routine as a writer, maybe plotting versus pantsing. If you're going to come in and sit down and sit at your keyboard or sit at your page, do you know where you're going that day? Do you know where anything is going that day? Sort of maybe a plotter versus pantser.
All right, thank you. Plotter versus pantser? Yeah. I'm totally a pantser. I totally work without a net. My habit and routine has been for, I guess 10, 12 years now, or more than that. Damn, I'm getting old. I started because out of necessity. I had 2 little daughters. I would take them to school. I was teaching full time. I had about 30, 45-minute window in the morning where I could go work. I'd take them to daycare or school, immediately go to my writing space, work for 30 minutes as hard as I can. I didn't have time to outline or plot, you know, and I would work with that image that day, and then I make myself a couple of notes for what I think is coming tomorrow. And then when I walk in the next day, that's kind of my pickup point. And I've written, 8 novels now like that. And even though I have more time now because I'm not teaching anymore, I still I don't like to look too far ahead because I truly, and this is a personal thing because there's a million ways to do it. I'm always afraid of robbing my characters of free will. And I feel like if I look too far ahead or outline or anything, then I've already decided for them what they're going to do. So when I go in the morning, I kind of know what the end game is. And I don't like that feeling. The best days are when I go in and I've got a couple of notes for what I think is coming. And when I walk out that later that day, something completely different has happened because something else has taken over. And I've been free to let them go that way. And quite frankly, as a writer, I love that. It's a stressful way to work, but I do love the moments of discovery and kind of the natural journey of discovery, because I feel if I don't really know what's going to happen, and if I'm discovering, then when you get it in your hand, you take it home tonight and you start reading, you're going to feel that same sense of discovery as you go along and not being quite able to know what's coming next. You know.
So like Hemingway, leave yourself a starter point for your next session.
Well, yeah, I mean, I learned that reading Hemingway, right? And the way he talked about it, he would go and work in the morning, and then he would say, I would leave it for the next day and let my subconscious have it the rest of the day. And I'm the same way. Like when I'm in the midst of something, I have a goal for 1,000 words a day. And when I get there, even if I'm like juicing and like jacked up and like feel it and know it, I stop. And I'll make those notes for tomorrow because I don't want to like empty the tank in that moment because I want to have something tomorrow when I show up to go for and just let my subconscious have it the rest of the day and let it kind of marinate, as they do say.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
You mentioned your writing routine as you began. Talk to us about your writing routine and writing life and your life on the square now, because you're one of the few working writers who works full-time as a writer, and also somebody who occupies the square. It's part of your domain, which I think is a fantasy many have. And not that you're living out a fantasy, you're working hard, but you're doing something that's kind of quite remarkable.
Well, thank you, John T. I mean, quite frankly, if you'd have told me 15 years ago this is what I'd be doing, I'd have been like, you are full of shit. There's no way I'll be doing that. I mean, I'm very grateful for it. It's been hard-earned, which is most things are. But my routine remains the same. I have a little studio space in the old Anchorage building over here. I still have one daughter. I have to drive to school for a little while longer. It won't be much longer. But I take her in the morning, and I go to my space, and I work. And then I'm sure y'all see me walking around the square. Like I go for walks, and I go to the coffee shop, and I air out a little bit, and then I go back and I work a little more. And then I go to the cigar shop, and I sit there with a cigar, and that's another, hour and a half of work with the smoke sitting there. It's something very nice about it. But I will tell you that it is very rewarding to do that every day. I mean, it's very rewarding to see, the people at the coffee shop and the people I just see. I mean, some of you that I just pass in town, when I'm just walking around and like clearing my head for a minute before I go back into the hole. And it's very rewarding to, go have lunch at Proud Larry's and talk to, the bartenders there. And then at 4 o'clock, God willing, if Sabria's, willing to pick up the kid, I mean, we know where we go at 4 o'clock. It is like sometimes I think it feels like a little made up existence, but it's real, but I'm also very motivated by it too, and I don't take it for granted because I know what a special place this is and what a special town it is, and so many people who were here before me have been influences of mine, and if I can continue that chain of things going down the road, then I'll just keep trying to do it.